Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new year. And there's some exciting stuff that's happening with the LCS. I'm joined right now by Evil Geniuses, staff members, elite leaders. I don't know exactly what the official titles are. We're going to find out in just a moment. Of course, this coverage brought to you by Alienware. But first off, I'm joined right now by Greg. Greg, what what is your current title? What's your role now?
My current title is Director of Esports at Evil Geniuses. So I've now stepped into the role of overseeing not just League of Legends, but all competitive esports operations at EG.
Gotcha. League, you got tired of League. You needed more on your plate, I
Just
guess.
needed to broaden my horizons a little bit.
Very good. Well, new EG member, or relatively new in comparison, is Peter. Peter, welcome to the LCS. I think I can officially say that on behalf of LCS.
Hello, Travis. I'm happy to be here. It's the first time I think we've talked in an interview, right?
I think in an interview, yes. By the way, we should say what is your exact title now?
So I'm going to be the head coach of Evil Geniuses League of Legends.
Very good. Well, I was just contemplating on this as I was getting ready this morning. I think I feel like the last time you and I hung out was like half a decade ago in Korea or something. When was the last time we spent time together? I think it was with Kelsey, possibly.
Yeah, I think it was with Kelsey, and I think it was in China actually. I think
was it China?
2017. I think it was 2017.
I know it was Asia somewhere. I just it's always fun to catch up with people after several years. So either way, we're going to talk about Evil Geniuses off season and their exciting entry into the LCS season with this new roster here. And I think the best way to start with that is to talk to you, Greg, kind of about what you learned in 2020 and what caused you to, where was your mind at before you started talking to Peter, and what made you decide to bring him on? Because I know he was an early piece.
Yeah. I mean, I think 2020 in general was just a broad learning experience, right? It was our first year. It was my first year working team side, of course. It was our first year back in the LCS after a long time. The off season that year, we had put our team together in the span of a month. A lot of that before we even had coaches on board. So I think going into the 2021 off season, this was a real good chance for us to reset and actually have all of our bearings and a good sense of like what we wanted operations to look like, what our weaknesses are, and how we wanted to grow as an org. So yeah, Peter was one of the first pieces we added, and I think probably one of the most important pieces that we added in the off season, because I think we're evolving at EG, like from the LCS roster all the way down to our academy and amateur teams. And Peter's a very integral part about like how we're setting up the systems to succeed competitively, not just this year, but also in the longer term with our development pipeline and our other players.
Gotcha. So what was the sort of philosophy? I mean, obviously, I think you guys were not satisfied with the results, didn't make it to Worlds, but actually did have some really great performances at times throughout the year. So, what reflecting on 2020 very briefly, like where was your mind at, and what did you think of it before you headed into the 2021 planning?
Into the off season?
Yeah.
I think we wanted to be open-minded. I think the offseason always has a bunch of twists and turns. I think this offseason was particularly challenging, but I think coming directly out of 2020, we knew we had pieces on contract, right? We knew we had a ton of flexibility, right? I think going into this offseason, like we had Huni, Svenskeren, Jizuke, we had everyone potentially for this year. And I think we wanted to be thoughtful around where could we optimize. We wanted to continue to build around Svenskeren coming into this offseason, just given the jungler availability and our confidence in Dennis. And we sort of took a look at all the various scenarios, right? Just given that we had import slot flexibility, and this is where we leaned very heavily into like bringing Peter on early, seeing like who he was excited to work with, who our staff was excited to work with out in the field. And it was a lot of conversations, and it was topsy-turvy with like various different points, like the Oceania news and free agency, and I think a lot of other wrinkles that other teams in the ecosystem were going through. So I think our plans very quickly and rapidly changed regardless of what we thought coming out of 2020.
Well, I know he's sitting right next to you, but before I turn to him, why Peter? Why was he your first piece?
Yeah, I mean, Peter's proven coach, right? Like his resume speaks for himself, and I think more broadly, like his talents, not just as a strategic coach at the top level, but his ability to be an executive coach for us, sort of like I said, evolving how we think about player development, how we rise to the ranks, and how we build a sustainable future in League of Legends. Like, this is year 2 of EG, and Peter is uniquely positioned, I think, for us to help us shape what years 3, 4, 5, and 6 look like. Perhaps equally or better than any other coach in the ecosystem, just given his stellar work with rookies in the past and his eye for talent in the future.
Nice. Well, Peter, congratulations on your 5-year-long contract. It sounds like you're going to be with Evil Geniuses for a while. But Peter, I mean, what brought you to Evil Geniuses, and if maybe perhaps you can provide even just a little bit of context for some of the LCS fans who maybe were not familiar with what you were up to right before this.
So for the LCS fans who don't know me so well, my name is Peter Dunn. Obviously, I'm the EG coach. I've been working in League of Legends for 8 years now. But let's say 5 years full time, 2 years as a full time head coach in Brazil, 3 years in Europe, and some time as a part time analyst and scout in China beforehand. My history before is that I was the head coach of Mad Lions in 2020 and Splice before they rebranded. My time on Mad Lions came to the end at the end of 2020. This was a long-term plan, and there was a plan to create a transition to Mac as the new head coach from the start of the season. And I was looking at my options at the end of 2020. I've always wanted to coach across all the major regions. And I was looking at my options in North America for 2021. I interviewed with a lot of different teams in North America, but EG were the team that really stood out in terms of the project, the long-term project that they were building, and what they kind of wanted to achieve. I mean, to give an example, in my interview for EG, EG questioned me. They didn't take on reputation, anything about my ability to run a team or anything to do with my in-game knowledge. They questioned me really in depth about these areas, and this is something that really impressed me, that they weren't willing to take anything just on reputation. They went into a lot of detail, questioned me on a lot of things that, dug up a lot of things in my past which I didn't know people knew about, and this really impressed me.
What did they find?
They talked to players that I'd worked with 4.5 years ago, asking me about, to try to track my development in in-game knowledge as a coach and my in-game understanding and out-of-game understanding. And this really impressed me when I found out that they tracked down old players of mine and just gone and talked to them. I have no idea what those players said, but I hope it was good. That's all I can say.
Very good. Well, then let's talk about the roster, and maybe we'll also discuss the construction. So really quickly, for the fans that took the off-season off and are just now tuning in to find out that some big names retired and some other players swapped around, we ended up getting perks in North America. What is the current EG roster heading into the start of 2021?
So we're going to have Impact as our top laner, Svenskeren as jungler, Jizuke as mid, definitely as AD carry, and Ignar as support.
Sure. And on, I don't know which one of you guys wants to tackle this, because I'm sure you were both sort of going through this together, but what was the offseason like? And if you could maybe paint me a picture of the sort of steps that led you to ending up with this lineup. And I know you talked a little bit about this, Greg, wanting to build around Svenskeren, but I'm curious to sort of like what transpired during those several weeks, maybe a month or so.
Sure, yeah, it's almost hard to keep a track of all the details, because I think I know roller coaster is a term that you use pretty often, but this offseason was a roller coaster, right? I think we came into it expecting some things, and then the news broke that Oceania players were going to be native NA residents. We had other news break with other teams, some deals fell through. It was a wild offseason. I would say sort of the sequence of events, we entered the offseason just checking all our bases and checking all our options, right? You have to find out who's actually available, what players are going to be confirmed to be parts of their teams, what players are available for buyout or transfer or whatnot. So like I mentioned earlier, we entered really like eyes wide open, just like how can we build sort of the best team possible? How do we think our players did this past year, and like who are our players potentially interested in playing with, and like what's the best talent available that we can bring in? So I would say like I mentioned, there were two big inflection points that sort of shifted our thinking. Like the first one being, God, I don't even remember the order. Like one of them was definitely like the Oceania, right? Because it affected sort of all the players, right? I think, including other teams' plans, right? Because part of this is how we're responding to how other people are operating in the market.
Yeah, Cloud9 notably had said they were going to keep their roster the same,
right,
and changed it whenever this news
exactly.
broke, which that in of itself, I think, sent ripples throughout the scene.
Right. Because like that was one of the big ones, right? Because all of a sudden, like some players from their roster become available, and like if you're able to bring some of their pieces, like how does that shift our import slots? How does that shift the players that our players might want to be playing with? Like who do we like? It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, right? And except like the pieces got scattered to the winds like 3 or 4 times. But I think ultimately in landing on our roster, right, I think like Impact is someone that I think Peter can speak to this. Peter's been interested in working with for a long time. And I think his veterancy and his stability in the top lane is something we highly coveted this offseason. We continue to think the world of Dennis, and he's the piece that we brought in last year with the intent to build around, and we're continuing to have confidence in him.
Svenskeren, for those that don't know his name, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Svenskeren. And the Jizuka and Ignar combo is something we're particularly excited about because, we sort of see Ignar's playstyle and Jizuke's playstyle like boosting the both of them, right? I think sort of having not only the two of them, but the trio of Ignar, Jizuka, and Svenskeren is something that's really interesting, at least for me as a fan, and like my eyes for the game to see this year. And this is territory that Peter should probably cover. And
sure.
I think the last piece was, of course, like, we worked with Definitely all of last year. He had exciting points, and I think in many ways he had he's proven himself to be LCS ready, and we're excited to see how he fits in with the rest of our team, particularly given that he's familiar with some of our guys in our system.
And before I toss it over to Peter to sort of go a little bit more in depth with how he sees the team functioning and goals, that type of thing, I do want to ask you, there was a lot of maybe like a week long, it was probably only a couple days, but in my mind it felt like it was a week of sort of drama and rumors and all this stuff about a TSM, EG. I at some point in time I heard it was a swap. At some point in time I heard it was separate deals, but around Huni and Lost. So I don't know if you can comment on any of that or sort of what went down for the folks that were watching everything and were really confused by what they were hearing.
Yeah, I can comment a little bit. I think especially when it hits free agency week, right? The hours feel like days, the days feel like weeks, and the weeks feel like months, right? And I think it sort of speaks a little bit to the volatility of this offseason. I would say ultimately, teams have to work in their best interest, right? And I think each team sort of responds differently and has different thresholds and different priorities and how they adapt to emergent situations in free agency. So I think, with respect to TSM and whatever deals we had with them, like they acted in their best interests, and we sort of responded to that, right? I think in my mind, whatever the situation was, like our priority was doing right by our players. Huni was a terrific servant for us, and we wanted to make sure, regardless of whatever deals that did or didn't fall through, that he had a good home and he was able to showcase his talents at the LCS level. That was very important to us, and we're excited to be promoting Deftly, right? We had someone we've been working around for the last year. Like Lost was someone we were in conversations with and had certain expectations around, but it was a crazy offseason. It's only my second, so I don't know if it was the craziest ever, but it certainly felt a lot crazier than last year, and last year's only lasted like a month for us. So
yeah, it's hard to say. I think if it was crazier or as crazy as the 2018 offseason when we had several teams leave and new ones come in and entire rosters. But it certainly feels like it could have been, just based off of all the rumors and everything that I heard. So sorry, Peter, let's toss it over to you then. I'd love to sort of hear about your vision of what this roster is, what these players bring, how you expect to sort of see them function. I mean, what is the extended elevator pitch, I guess, on this roster for people who are interested in it?
makes a lot of sense. What I would say about this roster is this is going to be a roster which goes really hard right from minute one. It should be really exciting team to watch. I would expect that we're not going to go to 40 minutes at all this season. You can quote me on this in 6 months. But this is a roster which is going to go hard from the early game. Generally, throughout my career, I have always gone for players who I feel that have really, really clearly defined strengths that you can look to build around. And rather than trying to get a player who's 8 out of 10 in everything, I would rather have players who have very, very clear 10 out of 10s, which I think is what you're going to see with Ignar and what you see with Jizuke. Sure, they have strengths and they have weaknesses too, but we'll look to cover their weaknesses in other members in their team. I think that seeing a team that has players that play this kind of aggressive, fast-paced, they're willing to take the 50-50 flips. They're willing to we'll try to move them to 60-40 flips, but they're willing to take these flips in order to push the game. And then they're not afraid to put the responsibility of the game on their shoulders. And I think that this is really what I value in Jizuke and Ignar. Obviously, you can't just have everyone in your team going in all the time and being hounds, keen to attack the bit. And so I think that this is what Impact will provide for the team. He'll provide a bit of solidity. He's a player that I've admired for a long time. I think the only person that I've lost to more in international competition than Impact is Faker over the years. But he's definitely a player that I respect a lot. Even in Worlds 2020, I think he showed his class. I mean, he was amongst the strongest performing top laners in the tournament, even though he was playing on weak side. We're not just going to use him as a weak side piece in 2021. He's going to get the chance to show some of his more strong carry picks. And Svenskeren, obviously, we've talked a lot about before. He's obviously the centerpiece of the team that we were looking to build around. And what I would say is that this offseason had a lot of instability, I would say. But when we were looking for the final piece that we wanted to put into our roster, there were lots of other names that were bandied around. I'm not going to call any individual people out, but I want to be clear that we're definitely somebody who served his time on EG Academy. He's a player that worked hard. He's a player that improved a lot over the last year. Before we decided we were going to work with Deftly. I spent in excess of 10 hours just watching his in-game comms, his in-game VODs, and it was very, very clear that there was an improvement that we saw over the course of last year. And this is something that we value really, really highly on EG. You do your time on amateur, you do your time on academy. If there is a chance for you in LCS, you will get that opportunity in LCS. And we want to make it really, really clear to our players that, when we're not just going to follow whatever the public perception is, who are calling for us to sign certain people. That
You're not just going to pick up a Golden Guardians roster after?
Yeah, I couldn't possibly comment on that, but what I would say is that there are many ways that you can develop through youth. It doesn't necessarily mean that you go out there and you go and pick up all the hottest rookies that are out there, and which I think a lot of teams have chosen to do. I mean, I can maybe give an example to give an idea of my philosophy, which is that in Europe there is a player called Diplex who's considered a really high value rookie, and this is a player that many fans in Europe and many fans in North America were calling for, to be imported into LCS or to be brought into LEC, and the team that he's on, rather than promoting him too quickly and too early in his career, Vitality are putting him in academy and looking to develop him through academy. And this is kind of a lot of the philosophy that we have on EG, right? We care about long-term development. We care about sustainability. We're not willing to sacrifice the short term in order to do it. But you join our amateur team, you join our academy team, you work hard, you improve, you show that you have that ability in our team environment, in our team culture, and you will get your opportunity. And that's kind of how we feel very strongly, and we're very confident about definitely moving into next year. In scrims, his performance has been far above what even I expected. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing it, to seeing him show that on stage.
Nice. Well, I'm excited to see what the roster can do. One question I do have for you is, as you were kind of going through, you were talking about, for instance, Ignar and Jizuke and their tendency to go ham. And I think one thing that we saw with EG last year, and I know you were not with the team at the time, but there's a tendency for a bit of a disconnect, right, where we would see players run in, and then the less conservative players kind of hang out in the back, and it felt like people were not always on the same page. And so as we're kind of talking a little bit about like a Juzuke and an Ignar, and then, let's say like a Svenskeren and an Impact, how do you as the coach ensure that we're not going to see situations where the team seems split, where there's two charging into a dragon fight while the others are hanging out, in jungle or something?
I think that there's a natural tendency in League of Legends towards more defensive reactive play. If you're a team that wants to play really, really aggressively, you have to be willing to take flips, right? It's not about playing 50-50 flips. Sometimes you can make it a 70-30 flip or an 80-20 flip, if you want to play very, very aggressive early game. Sometimes you're going to play this kind of style and it's going to go wrong and you're going to look really, really stupid. This means that naturally, I think teams tend towards playing this more passive reactive style because you don't put yourself in a situation where commentators can easily go and say, ha ha ha, they messed up. But by the same token, by not taking the opportunities that you needed to take and not taking the chances that you needed to take, you still end up losing the game because you just get outscaled, or a team plays more passively and more reactively than you do, and is more stable and more able to punish your mistakes. So the biggest thing that I think that I can add to a roster like this is to encourage our players to just keep going in, to just understand that sometimes if you go and play this aggressive style, sometimes it's just not going to work. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go for it next time, right? Because it's better to go and play this aggressive style, to have control over the game, to go and to take these aggressive chances, than to put the burden on the enemy team and allow them to control the pace of the game and allow them to dictate to you how you want the game to be played. And to be clear, Jizuke and Ignar are players that will not be dictated to. They will grab the reins and make the game about them. And for me, my responsibility as a coach is to firstly to turn these 70-30 chances into 75-25 or 80-20s, and also to recognize, to be there to provide positive reinforcement for when things don't go right. But what I can guarantee to EG fans and the LCS fans is this is going to be one of the most exciting teams to watch in the league, and I think that you can hold me accountable to that in 6 months by the end of the year. So.
I'm also kind of curious. I don't know which one of you wants to tackle this, but I think for the first time in my coverage of the LCS, we have a very strong spread of teams in the LCS that have different goals and aspirations for their rosters. And so, in the past where I would interview teams and like 8 out of 10 of them would be like, we're going to Worlds, baby, on like January 15th. I think, you have a lot of other teams that are saying, no, this is a rebuilding year, or we're developing or whatever. So to that point, what are the goals for EG this year? What does success look like?
Yeah, I can tackle that a little bit, and I'll let Peter dive into what it looks like from a tactical perspective and a performance perspective. But I think for me, one of the accomplishments I'm most proud of and standing behind this offseason is sort of the investment we've taken into the NA ecosystem and how we're planning for the long term. Like, these are things we just couldn't do in year one, right? Like, we had to piece together a starting roster and an academy roster, but now we're able to make some of the infrastructure upgrades that we've always coveted and wanted to implement. So I think for me, it's our extension into an amateur roster. It's shifting to more of a rookie focus in academy. I think, as speaking from someone as like EG organization, like, my goal with the program is for us to really build a long-term pipeline and be both a thought leader and an actual leader in investing in the North American ecosystem and helping sort of our competitive pipeline, right? I think that is not only with regards to Peter's tactical expertise in providing young players good coaching from the very earliest part of their careers, but it's also like enforcing player outcomes, right? Like, there's so many players out in the ecosystem who, like, they enter pro play and it's shell shock, right? They don't know necessarily what it takes to be a good pro, like what it takes to sort of maintain a healthy work-life balance and like be PR ready or just be sensitive to like the things outside of the game. And I think our ability to extend earlier into the ecosystem, bring in more players and help Riot and the LCS and our other colleagues like establish an aspirational path to pro play. That's what I'm really excited about, and I think hopefully us, along with some of the other teams participating, are really able to sort of invest in and develop that pipeline that has taken a couple hits over the last couple of years, I'd say.
But Greg, is this team going to Worlds?
I'll let Peter answer that question.
Okay, Peter, is this team going to Worlds?
Sure. I mean, so I think just to finish what Greg says before I go and talk on the strategic thing, this is not just about players as well. It's about stuff, right? And we've taken a lot of steps this year to, Matt is new, our academy coach. He was a player. We've also brought in Turtle and Mash, who are both kind of starting their top tier coaching careers. And also we have Ian and Ido in the academy team. It's not just about developing players, because you need a sustainable ecosystem. It isn't just about having a strong playing staff. It's also about having a strong support and coaching staff. 1 second.
Is that one of them? Are they contacting you now?
They're probably just excited.
Yes, that is actually one of them, and they should know perfectly well that they're not supposed to be contacting me right now, and we're going to need to have a talk about that.
Yeah, you got to get some boundaries up, Peter.
Yes, exactly. Some boundaries need to be put in place. But what I would say is, there have been a lot of teams that have gone out there, or a lot of commentators have said, this is a team that's going into this year with development in mind. This is a team that's been going out with a win more philosophy in mind. To me, I don't see why you can't do both, right? Like, having a development roster isn't just about, or having long-term development isn't just about picking 2 rookies from solo queue and putting them into your team and saying, oh, look, we're developing these kind of players and these are our long-term development goals. It's about putting infrastructure in place. It's about making sure that these players are being promoted at the right time. They're not being promoted too early. You've put them in the right system around them, and you've put the right players around them to help them succeed. Right? You see so many times that players get promoted to LCS or to LEC too early in their careers, and then as a result, they don't perform at the level that people hope for them, and then it takes them 2 or 3 years to recover. And this isn't something that we're looking to do, right? Like in terms of development, we're really, really keen to stress that we're developing from the bottom up. In terms of how we're going to do this season, I think that a team that has Impact, Jizuka, and Svenskeren, I mean, if we're not there trying to compete to go for Worlds, then what are we doing with a roster like this, right? Like I think here, for me in my career, I've coached for 8 seasons and I've gone to Worlds for 6. Right, and I've gone to Worlds with rosters that people said, "Oh, this is just a development roster." Right, Mad Lions last year, people just said, "Oh, they signed 4 rookies and 1 sophomore." Right, like the only purpose of this roster is a development roster to be, to be a cheap roster and to develop into the future. Right, and that's not how it was with rookies, and that's not how we're going to set up the team to play this year. Right, we're going to be playing aggressive, we're going to be competing for Worlds, and we should be judged on that. Right, if we're a team, if EG are a team that are in 8th or 9th position in 2 or 3 months, then serious questions should be asked about the coaching staff. And at the end of the day, that comes down to me. Serious questions should be asked about me, right? And something that I've believed in my career, I've never missed playoffs in my career. I've gone to Worlds 75% of the times that I've been coaching, 75% of the seasons that I've been coaching, and to not go to Worlds this year for EG would for me be very, very disappointing, and especially considering what happened with Mad Lions at Worlds last year. I would hope to go back and try to make amends. So I think this is a roster you should expect to go hard, to be afraid of nobody, and to be up there.
I know you mentioned that you don't see why teams can't both be about development and also about winning and going to Worlds. But when I look at the Cloud9 roster or the Golden Guardians roster, I don't think those teams can be about both. I think that's what's interesting to me, is that I think maybe in my mind, the EG roster, it can be about both, because you guys are not spending amounts of money to bring over perks, and you're also not bringing up a bunch of faces that most people haven't really heard of before. So I think that's really what's striking to me about the EG roster at the moment. I think the final question I just kind of have as we've rounded out the LCS stuff is there's so many changes that are happening in amateur and academy. Greg, I don't know if you guys are in a position yet to talk about what EG's commitment is going to be to the amateur side or how you see this stuff changing, especially, I mean, you were on the league side previously, so I'm sure this is all very fascinating too. So I don't know if you can comment at all on what EG's plans are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's evolving, right? This is year one of sort of a new system and a little bit of a shift in philosophy from the Riot side. And I think like putting the business hat on, it's something we'll keep a pulse on, and it's something we actively talk to Riot about, right? I think Riot consults with the teams and asks our opinions on what we think about the changes, and we're at least able to voice our opinion. I don't think we directly affect policy all the time, but that's something that we'll think actively about, but it's something we want to be a participant in, right? I think even as there's volatility in some of the changes, like as long as it makes sense for us and we believe and we're able to have a pipeline that we can invest in, and also that and also if we believe that we can make a good impact on the space, like I think we will be involved. It's something we're super excited about. I think it's something like we talked about since day one and just couldn't do. So like for this year, for sure, we're committed. Our amateur team has already like been very active over the Christmas break, and they've been scrimming as hard as anyone these days. So we're very excited about them, and we're excited to continue to support them. And as Peter said, like we're excited for them down the line to pop up in our academy and our LCS teams. Like I think player development is a thing that's spoken about very constantly, and I think it's a tough nut to crack. And I think hopefully like we have solutions here, and we'll work with the leagues, we'll work with Riot, we'll work with whatever the amateur ecosystem looks like, and we want to be players there for sure.
Yeah, very good. Well, hey, I know I've taken a lot of both your time, so if there's anything either of you want to say to all the EG fans or the LCS fans, maybe some people who were like, well, Bjergsen's not playing anymore, who am I supposed to root for? I'll give you both the floor. I don't know if you want to start us off, Peter.
What I would say with EG is don't look at EG just at LCS, right? We shouldn't be held accountable just for our performance at LCS. Look at the team in amateur, look at the team in academy. I'm very, very excited for those 10 players. I think we're going to have a lot to say, definitely. And a lot of players who are really exciting youngsters coming through the pipeline. And what I would say for the main team is don't have faith in the process, have faith in the system. I think that this is a team that can compete, and I think that this is a team that can surprise a lot of people, not just in terms of the level of play that you're going to be able to see, but also in terms of the style of play. There will be certain champions that maybe you would never imagine certain of our players playing, that they can play, and they can play to a very, very high level. And we're looking forward to showing that this season, right? I think that there'll be a lot of surprises there for everyone. And hopefully that will help us bring the success that we want to this organization. Very
good. And Greg?
Yeah, and I think for me, to EG fans past, present, and future, like thank you for your support, of course. Like this is year two of our time back in the LCS. We're constantly learning and we're constantly trying to evolve. And I think for any fan that's interested in supporting League of Legends, like North American League of Legends, I think we're a team to watch, and I hope that you keep your eyes on us, you engage with us. I try to be active on Twitter, Discord, etc. And we're very open about this, and we're very excited about what we're building, and we're very excited for anyone who wants to join us in that journey.
Very good. Well, hey, thank you so much, both of you, for the interview. I'm really looking forward to seeing what EG can do. I will say that I was kind of like, I wasn't sure what the narrative was, but especially Peter, I think you've sold me on the this is going to be a fun team to watch thing. I mean, I loved watching Jizuke play last year, so I'm excited to see how the team goes bonkers on the Rift. Either way, thank you guys so much for the time, and for everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things LCS leading up to the start of the 2021 season right here on my YouTube channel. It's officially 2021. And I haven't had my hair cut in a long time, so I'm starting to get kind of this like emo thing going on here. Do you think I can? Do you think I could pull this off? Here we go. I'm so emo. Wait, there. I'm just feeling so emotional lately over the fact that you haven't checked out alienware.com/Travis and used Travis Tedoff Q4 in the description below to check out awesome Alienware stuff like this Area 51M. That took longer than I was hoping it would to pull this into the shot. Like this Area 51M, which is an amazing piece of hardware. Kobe was using this this past holiday break to play some video games, some World of Warcraft on his holiday break. Whatever. This video is going on too long. Anyway, check out the description below.